Hi, and welcome to the weekly predictions based on astrology for the week of April 26, 2021. In terms of the stock market directions, I think Monday is going to be an up day. Then on Tuesday and Wednesday, market will turn to down. And then on Thursday and Friday, I think things will look again better and market will likely go up. And by stock market, I mean basically Dow Jones and Nasdaq primarily. In terms of the important influences for this week, for the US, the end of April, from about the 26th through the 29th, and especially the 27th and 28th, may see increased news regarding earnings, financial institutions, financial policies, as well as healthcare, and there may be some news regarding departmental stores, so something like Nordstrom, for example. And there might be some slight concerns, so perhaps concerns about decrease in earnings or some losses, or there may be some announcements of new financial policies or deals, again, possibly involving departmental stores, and those announcements may trigger either anger or protest or some discontent. And as like I said, the 27th and 28th are the most likely days when we may hear about things like that, and I think that could be in part the reason for the market going down on Tuesday and Wednesday. Let's see, then on Wednesday, globally, I think this might be a reversal day, and so perhaps either by the end of the day on Wednesday, and if not on Thursday, is when we can see another reversal, this time from the down either on the morning on Wednesday to up on the afternoon on Wednesday, or if the entire day on Wednesday is a down day, then I think there's a good chance that on Thursday things will turn to up. And on Wednesday, there may be greater than usual focus on things like maybe some reaction to some news that will come up early on Wednesday, even perhaps pre-open hours, and those might be related to IT, telecoms, aerospace, high tech, and yet again department stores, especially out of the US. Let's see, and then on Thursday and Friday, again globally, there may be increased focus on things related to banks, earnings, finance, and currencies. That includes cryptocurrencies and really anything that's digital, meaning services that banks provide to transfer money digitally, or any companies that somehow enable users to connect to, basically some of their wallets or some services that are provided for sending money or anything like that. So, or even projects that involve developing some new ways of basically protecting financial transactions or financial data. So any of this kind of a interaction between finance and digital will be in the news on Thursday and Friday, and there we may see some surprising developments, maybe a start or an abrupt stop of some projects that are being developed. Suddenly something is canceled, or a new innovative approach is announced, or there could be a change in leadership. So again, it could be at a bank or at some service that is providing some financial services online or deals with cryptocurrencies, for example. Or if there is a trade or going on, again, there may be some surprising developments where things suddenly are postponed, and similarly there may be some sudden changes in the value of related either services, currencies, or financial institutions. For China, the period of from April 30th to approximately May 3rd may see increased focus and increased news about the stock market, and there too may be increased volatility, especially as related to IT, telecommunications, aerospace, any sort of electric cars, any battery related developments, rockets, anything that moves fast and involves a lot of kind of important technical systems to make things work. Also increased news related to any activities related to, say, casinos, sports, gambling, entertainment, or generally speaking, risky or dangerous projects, so perhaps extreme sports or airplanes or drones even, but those that perhaps are used for military or space exploration, again with the twist for their military being involved somehow, or some high-tech weapons. And the announcements out of China may come out sort of either rapidly or unexpectedly, or the announcement may involve a new project, but the focus will be on a short timeline for implementation. So it will be a very ambitious project, or it will have already happened by the time the announcement is made, something that occurs really quickly or is scheduled to be implemented very quickly. For the US, May 1st through 4th, and especially the 2nd of May, may see increased focus on topics related to international relations, long-distance travel, international travel, international shipments, import, export, laws, regulations, also judges, lawyers, immigration, higher education, things of that nature. So all of the different Jupiterian areas really. And there we may hear about some new regulations or new goals being set for the future, like new vision that perhaps will cover the following 2 to 2.5 years. And that initiative may be announced again with the aim of making things happen quickly. Like I said, it may cover 2.5 years, but there may be fairly aggressive push, or it will be triggering, or it may trigger some heated arguments, perhaps again because there will be like an aggressive push for doing something, or the arguments could be because it may be seen as too risky, too aggressive, moving too fast, or pushing too far. Also, around the same time, May 1st through 4th, especially the 2nd in the US, there may be some increased news about possible either conflicts, arguments, or even actual attacks that involve prominent individuals in the areas that I just mentioned. So perhaps diplomats, judges, professors, people who are have some international connections or highly educated, or somehow are involved in maintaining international relations, or are famous, say, for traveling or something like that. And next Monday, the 3rd, globally, to me looks like a down day at this time. And that could be related to some concerns about IT, high-tech, telecommunications, airspace, electric cars, and the concerns, and that again, that's for following Monday, the 3rd of May. The concerns may include like lower earnings, problems with leadership, or some restrictive governmental regulations. So that covers this week, and just a preview for the following Monday. Now, in terms of the general global influences that we have just as background transits that kind of color, I guess, the influence for the next few months, we have, of course, the Saturn and Saturn and Uranus square that will be with us throughout, say, November 2022, and the planets kind of get closer to forming the square that's more tight, and then they separate a little bit. So we will experience kind of the tightening of that square sometime in June, and at that time, kind of ongoing tensions, anything that has to do with especially tensions between like conservative, kind of a status quo energy, or energies that want things to proceed slowly with a lot of restrictions, and energies that push for kind of a more freedom, making things happen faster, and basically being more innovative. Those approaches perhaps will start clashing a little bit more aggressively in June, and especially at the end of June through, I would say, around 9th of July is when there may be really intensified clashes that may unfortunately even spill into actual like protests and even some attacks, and or there may be increased news at the end of June, early July about, say, airplane accidents or accidents involving electric cars, and perhaps even bad weather, that maybe there are tornadoes and things of that nature. So just basically general unrest. And at the worst case scenario, even, something like an airline accident or some explosion of, say, fireworks that weren't stored properly and things like that. But generally speaking, this square of Uranus and Saturn will be with us through November of 2022 approximately, and the times that are remaining that I would say this transit's energy will peak will be this year, June 3rd through 25th. Not so bad, but getting kind of worse than in May. Then June 29th through July 9th, like really, I would say, dangerous time. And then later in the year, December 15th through 31st. And then finally in 2022, again, it will be this general background influence, but it may peak from about September 14th of 2022 through October 30th, 2022. For the US, this general period from about 1st of March through May 1st, and then later this year, August 24th, all the way through the end of February of 2022, may see increased focus in the news or some developments that are related to its military, especially Navy, but also weapons, partnerships or agreements with international partners, again, with more focus on weapons, military. And there's a greater probability than usual at those times of some sort of miscommunication or some unintentional error, and especially it may be involving some maritime like accidents or perhaps bad weather where there's fog or something like that, and it may lead to some accidents like a spill, an oil spill, chemical spill, submarine threat, or something that's unseen. So it could be even hacking or spying. So there's just this unfortunately heightened level of threat along those lines. That's for the US. And also for the US, from about April of 2021 through March of 2022, and especially for the period of April through September of this year, and then February through March of 2022, there may be increased focus on industries related to like gas, oil, but also chemicals, pharmaceuticals, Navy, as well as water. And by water, I mean any liquids, beverages, as well as water pollution. So all of those domains, obviously Neptunian domains. So as a background influence, through, like I said, about March of next year, for the US, there's increased probability of either bad weather, where maybe worse than usual, like hurricane season, some problems with water erosion, water pollution, contamination of chemicals, just like we had this news and where I guess there was some sort of a pool of chemicals, and because of excessive rain, that it had to be emptied into basically ocean because there was a concern about like not levee, but the I guess the pool of contaminated water basically polluting the community. So unfortunately, those kind of incidents there will be a greater probability of such incidents occurring through about March of next year for the US. And again, as a background influence for the next several months, like I said, through March of next year, there will be this increased there may be increased changes related to industries like oil, gas, also pharmaceuticals, and Navy and beverages, perhaps on how beverages are manufactured, etc. And there may be changes along the lines of how things are manufactured, how things are engineered, even how things are, I guess, logistics of how things perhaps are delivered, like supply chain, something that hasn't really been done on the same scale for, I guess, many, I would say, decades. And again, this is not an overnight one sort of off project, but rather the entire industries may be pivoting and kind of finding a different way of doing things that they have done before, or there may be some new engineering solutions that now enable these industries do things differently. So for example, like laying of underwater sea cables, or maybe building bridges, or building underwater tunnels, or building something that has to do with liquids, water, and navy. And unfortunately, some of those projects may not necessarily go quite smoothly or as planned, and that could be due to just things like bad weather. So you're trying to lay undersea water cable or something, and of course there's like a hurricane or something like that. But there could also be increased a level of confusion, deception, just lack of clarity, unclear status, like should this project continue or not. So that may cause some delays or some confusion along those lines. And lastly, for the same reasons, like confusion, uncertainty, bad weather, or lies and deception, during the same time period, so April of this year through March of next year, maybe there might be increased focus on some issues related to banks and their assets, also loans, mortgages, real estate, and savings, where there may be some lack of transparency of how perhaps where the investments are going, or how sort of stable is a particular bank, how much, I guess, cash does a bank have, or what's the actual value of a particular property, whether the rates, there may be some either confusion about that, lack of transparency, like it could be something that's intentionally hidden, by somebody cooking books, or it could just be an unclear status. And so there's this air of uncertainty around those areas. And another manifestation may deal with the actual physical security of like buildings and or physical security of kind of populations that are perhaps more needy, especially women and children. And that may have to do with physical safety, like are they in a safe location? Are the buildings where they're housed safe? And also, is the food safe? So something along the lines of basically a person's like either, physical safety and whether they're well fed, whether they're healthy. So those kind of issues may be more strongly featured in the news through about March of next year. So on the one hand, safety and stability of, savings and banks investments, and safety, not safety, but I guess security of their investments, especially in real estate, but also perhaps safety of the actual physical buildings and safety of food supply. Those issues may also be kind of more prominently featured in the news. And that again is a background influence more rather than one-off event. So then in terms of a glance ahead for the next few months and even into next few years, important period that's coming up in early June is June 1st through 6th, and especially 4th and 5th, where it's somewhat of at a difficult, tense, or even dangerous time of the year, where there may be increased probability of accidents, disasters, earthquakes, attacks, or some problems that have to do with things collapsing that are like, say, at the mine or underground storage, or problems with nuclear power or recycling facilities, but escalation of military tension. So things that basically kind of, the blow the fuse, and things that were hidden now become kind of exposed, be it in the sort of abstract kind of a sense of that, or it could be physically, where maybe there's an underground storage facility and there is, a shakeup, mine collapses, or, roof collapses, and now whatever was perhaps stored, some sort of waste, now rises to the surface. And at the same time, unfortunately, at the same exact time period, so early June, there may also be concerns about some either disagreements about prices or value of oil, chemicals, or some pharmaceuticals, and or with problems regarding delivery of, again, oil, gas, pharmaceuticals, or even ships moving through a particular body of water. Again, it could be just due to, say, there's earthquake and tsunami, or there's an accident, or it could be due to rising just tensions. So it could be that there are some conflicts and tensions starting as early as May 29th, and then or rising tensions, or perhaps there's like an oil spill, something is just an accident due to bad weather, but then things escalate. Unfortunately, it looks like it in early June, and things may get kind of more tense with more protests. It could be something that's in reaction to what occurs at the end of May, or it could be just as a follow-up, follow-up event to that. Let's see, as I mentioned, late June, early July, I would stay away from fireworks and any kind of locations where things may explode. Probably a good idea. Then in early September, maybe late even August, but especially September 1st through 3rd, may yet again see increased news on oil, value of oil, gas, chemicals, and also other Neptunian domains like pharmaceuticals, beverages, any sort of liquids in general, navy, even fisheries, anything marine life related. And at that time, unfortunately, the news may be stressful and probably similar to the kind of news we've had earlier this year from April 6th through 11th approximately. So to remind you again, there are concerns about water pollution, about this pool with contaminated water potentially bursting and flooding the community with contaminated water. And of course, they had to then let some of the contaminated water into the ocean without properly, I guess, cleaning it, or at least not sufficiently cleaning it. So either way, there was some pollution being released into the water. And other things that had occurred, there were some attacks involving like medical and or Navy personnel and or athletes. So again, we may see a repeat of similar situations, again, that could be related to Navy, healthcare, like medical care, and or pollution or chemicals. And unfortunately, at that time, early September, there may be some problems related to this. And in terms of prices of oil and gas, I think they may go down, and there may be disagreements perhaps about transportation of that, or sales, or manufacturing of related products. And I think there might be a major market drop around September 3rd as well. So then jumping sort of further ahead, just because I think it's worth mentioning ahead of time. Next year, 2022, around April 4th, maybe 4th, 5th, plus minus a few days, we will have fairly difficult transits coming up that may coincide with either, say, massive flooding, something that is a rare event. That's, when they say the great flooding of whatever year. Or perhaps like a quake and a tsunami, or a really major oil spill or spill of chemicals, and that's early April. And generally next year, on off, there may be more events related to like floods. But specifically early April is when a particular event may occur. So similar things that happened in the past, where like in 2009 there were some floods, I believe, in like UK, and also in Atlanta there was this once in 500 year type of flash flood. So something where you have several dozen of inches of precipitation in just a few hours, something that's really rare and unusual. And it may affect either a large number of people, or it could be featured in the news to the point where, it's globally sort of becomes known and everyone hears about it because, again, it's like the great some event. And then later, also not this year, but next year, and that would be in early August of 2022, there may be either a similar event, not necessarily related to flooding, but another event where it may also be another accident. And at that time, it may not be floods, but could possibly be related to like airplane accident or some malfunction of some electric equipment, like a power station, or actual, something that provides electricity, like a blackout on a large scale, could be because of, or separately, there may be like a major hurricane or tornadoes, but something that's beyond the usual kind of weather, and again, on a greater scale where it's like, oh, this happened once in, 10 years, once in a decade, as opposed to your, average annual increase in, say, tornado activity. Let's see, and then looking even further down for the US, the years of 2022 and 2023 generally seem like they might be somewhat difficult and even more turbulent than usual, because there will be a couple things happening at the same time. So one is Neptune, which again is, on the one hand, it's flooding, water, beverages, but also confusion, deception. If you think, chemicals and medication, where things basically obscure, and kind of person that's, high on some medication may not see things clearly. So there's some confusion, but also floods and kind of things that are being washed out and unclear. And that planet will be entering and then transiting through US fourth house that relates to like farmlands, banks, savings, but also actual like, home, I guess, definition of where the actual borders are. And by borders, I mean, could be between states, for example, or who owns which real estate, or also production of actual food. So what I think might happen at the time, due to specifically Neptunian influence, is that there might be increased risk of major floods, which of course can affect farmlands and subsequently obviously affect food production. And or the flood could be in the sense that, the real estate is underwater, not, either literally because of floods, or obviously in the sense that there may be some problems with, confusion about whether somebody can afford or pay their mortgage, or what the rates are, what the value of the real estate actually is. And there could also be some either conflicts over or confusion about, again, borders, not necessarily because of any aggression, but again, literally maybe a particular, city or something loses some part of their beach due to excessive flooding or some water, soil erosion. Or it could be, again, something that's just unclear, and there may be some uncertainty between, nearby entities where basically, again, there's some confusion regarding, I guess, borders, regarding real estate, regarding bank stability, regarding sort of how good of an investment a particular piece of real estate is due to where it's located. And unfortunately, there might be some problems related to just actual farmlands or land because of excessive flooding. And with that, there might be some soil pollution as well. So in addition to that, which is kind of like this background influence for 2022, 2023, we will have a Pluto return, which is the first Pluto return for the US. So meaning that Pluto returns back into the same position where it was when the US was initially founded. And that typically coincides with major, I guess, reforms and major, I guess, rebirth of the country, but also, of course, before things can be changed and reformed, such as, of course, there's this talk about police reform and things like that. Things obviously some need to be eliminated, and some things may literally be completely discarded before they can be rebuilt. So Pluto is a planet that is fairly not dramatic, but rather does things in a drastic way, where things like a phoenix, when things need to first burn down or completely be discarded before they are rebuilt. So unfortunately with that, like what we've seen a few years back when like Vatican went through Pluto return as well, it may also bring some scandals, because again, Pluto is kind of rules the underground. So things that were like either waste or things that were discarded, again, it could be nuclear waste that's been stored before somewhere, may come up to the surface, and it could be actual physical waste, or it could be just some not secrets, but things that were perhaps hidden. Maybe some banks or some corporations were not being quite honest with their books, for example, and at that time these issues may all come to the surface, and before things can be reformed, more of kind of a negative news may come out, because again, things that were not done correctly will first need to be exposed. Again, Pluto also rules things like, of course, police, anything that has to do with like nuclear power and power in general. So perhaps how power is generated. So there may be breakdowns of some power plants first, or like I said, there could be perhaps like a nuclear storage or just some storage facility or a mine where things have been kind of put away and hidden. But now, maybe due to those floods, like I just mentioned, things may collapse due to soil erosion, and that dirt kind of comes to the surface, and then it has to be dealt with, and things have to be just completely rebuilt, which ultimately is a positive outcome, because obviously then you have this brand new kind of a improved approach where hopefully at least it's improved, but at least those hidden things are now being discussed and addressed. That said, this probably will be a difficult period, so something to keep in mind and to be prepared for, I suppose. And then lastly, that's like a global influence, interesting in many different respects in 2025, and then we could start feeling it in as early as 2024, mid-year to late year for sure, is we will have two things happening. One, we will have Saturn conjunct Neptune, which often coincides with a variety of like things like epidemics on one hand, so increased focus on anything to do with like healthcare, medical care, again, because say there's epidemic, so it needs to be addressed, but it can also lead to developments where there's some innovations and some new kind of rules are put in place where it actually improves healthcare and improves medical science, because again, maybe it's addresses some issue, but again, ultimately it leads to things being improved. At the same time, there may also be focus on oil prices and gas prices, and there might be a major reversal point on like a multi-year scale. So at this time, I think it might be a top for like oil prices, similar like a few years back. I think I forgot already. I think it's 2009, maybe 2009, but I'm not sure. I can remember. But when we had Saturn and Neptune squaring each other, there was a major reversal where we had a fairly major drop in oil prices. At this time, I think 25 approximately is going to be another big reversal point for oil prices and gas prices as well. And that's based on sort of trajectory on the transit between Saturn and Neptune. At the same time, Neptune is also going to be changing its sign, and so it's going to be entering from its sign that it rules, Pisces, where it's comfortable in, into the sign of Aries, which is a fire sign, and that may completely change sort of the application of anything, application development, usage of things that are related to Neptune, which, as I mentioned before, it could be like Navy, biomedical research, actual oil, beverages, water. So because it's entering a sign that's not necessarily that friendly to Neptune, and Aries has to do with things that are fiery, hot, but also it's the first sign, so it has to do with things that are beginnings, but also Aries likes things to go really fast, hot, fast, and so the positive manifestations could be that there may be some really major developments where allow, say, biomedical research to happen faster, or if there is a treatment that previously would take a long time to either develop or to implement, now this treatment, medical treatment, can be applied super fast, things can be treated much faster, and Aries has to do with like wounds, for example, inflammation and trauma that has to do with like head area. So any of these kind of head area, cuts, burns, things like that. So treatments for those areas may actually at that time in 2025 the treatments may be developed at that time that will actually be much more effective, like sports injuries as well. And the treatments themselves may now be able to develop a lot faster. Perhaps it will be because of some genetic, research or something like that. But while Saturn and Neptune often coincide with bad epidemics, like the Black Plague, for example, and Spanish flu, however, because of, again, Neptune also entering into Aries, I think the response to those there may be capacity for faster response, for, providing quicker treatments to counteract that as well. So that's, I guess, pluses and minuses. And other things that Aries may kind of bring, the energy of Aries may bring with it is maybe increased focus on doping in athletes, because Aries also rules sports, and of course Neptune has to do with drugs and chemicals. So there may be some concerns perhaps of some undetected substances, or maybe there may be some concerns about athletes kind of overdoing on some doping or something like that. But also could be invention of some sports or focus on sports that are virtual. So rather than actually performing sports in physical world, there may be focus on doing sports somehow virtually, some virtual reality sports. And similarly, Neptune has to do with things like, say, movies and music, and there may be, again, focus on somehow either applying literally like movies and music and those kind of invisible, kind of ephemeral arts in domains that are related to Aries. So it could be somehow in sports, maybe like really like music that accompanies, like sports or something like that becomes really popular, or development of music, or even the shooting movies becomes possible really, really fast. So maybe instead of shooting like movies over a period of months, now they can be digitally quickly created with, AI, and things just can be spit out, the new music and new movies can be spit out within, minutes by just computer, something like along those lines. And of course, Aries also is ruled by Mars, god of war. So a lot of those Neptunian characteristics, so like biomedical research or oil, chemicals, etc., maybe also be used more, or also, of course, Navy, submarines, ships, anything like that, would be then used more in the domain that corresponds to Aries, which would be, of course, weapons and wars. So there may be increased focus on developing anything to do with Navy or weapons that, again, either are chemical or somehow invisible and secretive, or literally use water, go through water, underwater, etc. Let's see, and so it will be definitely a different sort of, and I guess maybe there will be a change in even how the oil is used, like I said, and that could also correspond with this really major reversal in oil prices at the same time. So just one, it might be a really major point, reversal point for oil gas prices, but also it may coincide with really just a completely different new way, new approach to sort of oil and gas industry on the global scale, and that might be something that again is a fairly major kind of a pivoting moment. So that will be something interesting to look forward to, I suppose. And that's about it. Hope you had enjoyed this episode and you're having a fantastic week, and I'll catch you guys later. Until then, bye.